For decades, the tragic death of Natalie Wood has captivated and haunted Hollywood. The beloved actress, known for her ethereal beauty and unforgettable performances in films like West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause, died under mysterious circumstances in 1981 while aboard a yacht with her husband, Robert Wagner, and actor Christopher Walken. Her death was officially ruled an accident, but rumors, speculation, and unanswered questions have swirled for over 40 years. Now, at the age of 95, Robert Wagner has come forward to finally share the truth, a revelation that the world has been waiting for since that fateful night. For decades, Wagner remained largely silent, protecting his privacy while grappling with grief, guilt, and public scrutiny. But as the years have passed, the weight of the mystery has grown heavier, and Wagner decided it was time to speak. In this emotional account, we uncover what Robert Wagner has revealed about that tragic night, the events leading up to Natalie Wood's death, and the decades of unanswered questions that have tormented fans and investigators alike. What truly happened aboard the yacht that fateful evening? How has Wagner lived with the haunting memories of that night? And finally, after more than 40 years, what is the truth that he has kept to himself? This story goes beyond Hollywood glamour and gossip. It's a journey into grief, secrecy, and the human desire for closure, and it reveals the painful reality behind one of the most infamous, unsolved mysteries in entertainment history. The mysterious death of Natalie Wood has remained one of Hollywood's darkest and most enduring mysteries. On a cold November night in 1981, the world lost a shining star, a woman whose grace, beauty, and talent had captivated audiences since her childhood. Natalie Wood's passing wasn't just tragic. It was puzzling, surrounded by questions that lingered long after the official reports were filed. She was found drowned near Catalina Island after a weekend spent aboard the yacht Splendor with her husband, actor Robert Wagner, co-star Christopher Walken, and the yacht's captain Dennis Davern. The official cause of death was ruled an accidental drowning. Yet, from the very beginning, many found it difficult to accept that explanation. The details were confusing. The bruises on her body, the missing time, the conflicting statements. It all painted a picture far more complicated than the simple tragedy the report suggested. In the years that followed, speculation ran wild. Rumors of a heated argument between Wagner and Walken spread through the tabloids. Stories of jealousy, alcohol, and unresolved tension turned the tragedy into a decades-long Hollywood mystery. Through it all, Robert Wagner maintained his silence, refusing to engage with sensationalism, but also leaving the world wondering what truly happened that night. Now, at 95 years old, Wagner has finally broken his silence. In a recent, emotionally charged conversation with close family and a trusted biographer, he chose to confront the memories he had avoided for decades. His words weren't rehearsed or polished. They were raw, filled with regret and sorrow. For Wagner, the truth wasn't about defending himself anymore. It was about finding peace. He began by recalling the final days before the tragedy, how Natalie seemed distant, struggling with the pressures of fame and the strains of a marriage lived under public scrutiny. The weekend trip to Catalina was meant to be a quiet escape, a way to reconnect. "We just wanted to get away from it all," he said softly. But instead, that weekend would become the darkest chapter of his life. Wagner's voice reportedly trembled as he spoke of the night Natalie disappeared. He admitted that tensions were high on the yacht, a mix of alcohol, fatigue, and old emotions boiling beneath the surface. There were disagreements, he confessed, but nothing that seemed out of the ordinary for a couple who had loved passionately and fought just as fiercely. "We argued," he admitted. "We always did. But I never imagined that night would be the last time I saw her alive." When Natalie went missing, Wagner's world collapsed into chaos. Searchlights pierced the black ocean waves, shouts echoed across the water, and fear took hold of every soul on that yacht. Hours later, when her lifeless body was found, he said, "I knew my life would never be the same." For years, he was haunted by unanswered questions and public suspicion. He withdrew from Hollywood, choosing instead to live quietly with his memories. But the whispers never stopped. Every documentary, every interview, every new theory reopened old wounds. "I've lived with those questions longer than anyone," Wagner confessed. "I owe Natalie the truth, and I owe myself forgiveness." At 95, he finally seems ready to face both. And what he reveals is not a confession of guilt, but an acknowledgement of love, loss, and lifelong pain. For Robert Wagner, the truth about that night isn't about scandal. It's about the torment of not being able to change the past. Long before tragedy struck, Natalie Wood had already secured her place in Hollywood history. Born Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko in 1938, she was just a child when she first appeared on screen. By the age of 8, she had captured hearts in Miracle on 34th Street, proving that her talent was far beyond her years. Over the decades, she transformed from a bright-eyed child star into one of Hollywood's most radiant leading ladies. But behind her, captivating smile and graceful charm, was a woman who constantly battled insecurity and the weight of fame. Growing up in the spotlight meant her every move, relationship, and emotion were magnified. She often spoke about the pressure to appear perfect, the fear of letting people see her vulnerability. And yet, those very qualities made her performances unforgettable. In films like Splendor in the Grass and West Side Story, Natalie revealed her soul on screen, earning the admiration of millions. When she first met Robert Wagner in the early 1950s, Natalie was just a teenager and Wagner was one of Hollywood's rising stars. Their connection was instant and undeniable. She once described him as the love of my life. They married in 1957 in what many called a fairy tale Hollywood romance, beautiful, glamorous, and enviable. But as fame often does, it took its toll. Constant media attention, demanding schedules, and personal insecurities began to strain the relationship. They divorced in 1962, only to reunite years later. By 1972, they remarried, believing that their love deserved a second chance. Friends said that despite their past differences, they were bound by something deeper than passion, an understanding of each other's flaws and fears. Natalie adored her daughters, Natasha and Courtney, and often said her family was her greatest joy. For a time, life seemed peaceful, even idyllic. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming again. Natalie had begun working on new film projects, and her growing friendship with actor Christopher Walken, her co-star in Brainstorm, reportedly made Wagner uneasy. The media, ever eager for drama, speculated about tension on set and jealousy behind the scenes. Both Natalie and Walken dismissed these rumors, but they planted seeds of suspicion that would later loom large in the aftermath of her death. As Robert Wagner now recalls, the decision to invite Walken aboard the yacht Splendor for a weekend getaway was meant to be friendly and relaxing. The couple often took such trips to Catalina Island, seeking privacy and calm away from Hollywood's constant noise. But this time, things would unfold very differently. Wagner remembered the early part of that weekend as joyful. Laughter over dinner, stories shared beneath the stars, and a rare chance to escape their demanding lives. Yet, as the night went on, tensions began to rise. Alcohol flowed freely, and old insecurities found their way to the surface. According to Wagner's later recollection, an argument broke out, not just between him and Natalie, but involving Walken as well. The topic? Work, fame, and the direction of Natalie's career. She was passionate about what she wanted, Wagner admitted, and I was afraid of losing her again. Afraid of what the world could take from us. That night would become the one moment Wagner wished he could rewrite. Every decision, every word spoken, and every silence that followed would come back to haunt him for decades. As the evening drew on, Natalie left the cabin. What happened next remains the heart of the mystery. Did she step out for air? Did she try to untie the dinghy, as reports claimed? Or was there something more? Wagner's voice breaks when recalling that final moment. All I know is, she was there, and then she was gone. It's a memory that has lived with him for over 40 years, a memory that still echoes in every word he speaks today. The night of November 28, 1981, began like many others aboard the yacht Splendor, anchored near Catalina Island. The small group, Robert Wagner, Natalie Wood, Christopher Walken, and Captain Dennis Davern, had shared dinner and drinks, talking and laughing beneath the stars. But as the evening wore on, what began as light-hearted conversation slowly turned tense. Alcohol, exhaustion, and old emotions mingled to create an uneasy energy on the boat. According to Wagner, the argument that erupted was brief but powerful. He and Wagner disagreed over Natalie's career, a topic that had long been a source of tension. Wagner believed Natalie should continue acting, while Wagner reportedly wanted her to focus more on family. It wasn't about control, Wagner has said. It was fear. I'd already lost her once. I didn't want to lose her again. Voices rose, emotions flared, and Natalie, deeply upset, left the cabin. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. Wagner recalls hearing movement on deck, but assumed. She wanted space. Natalie wasn't one to back down when she was angry, he said quietly. I thought she'd gone to cool off, maybe to check the dinghy. But when the yacht grew silent and Natalie didn't return, panic began to set in. Wagner searched the boat calling her name only to find the dinghy missing. At first, he hoped she had simply taken it out for a short ride, but the dread quickly grew unbearable. Something didn't feel right, he remembered. The ocean was dark, cold, and quiet. Too quiet. At 1:30 a.m., the Coast Guard was alerted. Searchlights swept across the black waters as rescuers combed the shoreline. For hours, the darkness held its secrets. Then, just after sunrise, the news broke. Natalie Wood's body had been found floating less than a mile from the yacht. She was wearing a nightgown, socks, and a jacket. The shock that followed was indescribable. For Robert Wagner, it was the moment his world shattered. He was inconsolable, overcome with grief, disbelief, and guilt. I thought she'd be safe, he whispered years later. We'd argued before. We always found our way back. I never thought that would be the end. Investigators initially ruled Natalie's death an accidental drowning, suggesting she may have tried to secure the dinghy and slipped into the water. But almost immediately, inconsistencies in the reports raised questions. Bruises were found on her arms and body, and witnesses claimed to have heard shouting from the yacht that night. Captain Dennis Davern later admitted he hadn't told investigators everything, claiming he felt pressured to protect Wagner and the family during those painful early hours. Over the years, public speculation grew into a storm of suspicion. Talk shows, tabloids, and documentaries all dissected the events, turning tragedy into spectacle. Wagner, devastated, retreated from the spotlight. I lost the woman I loved and I lost my peace, he said decades later. Every rumor, every headline, it was like losing her all over again. The case was reopened in 2011 after new witness statements emerged. And in 2018, Wagner was officially named a person of interest. Still, no charges were filed and the truth remained elusive. For Wagner, the reopening of the case reopened his deepest wounds. People wanted answers I didn't have, he confessed. But no one wanted to hear that I've lived with this pain every single day since. The tragedy of that night became more than just a mystery. It became a shadow over Wagner's entire life. The man once known for his charm and poise was now seen through the lens of suspicion, regret, and grief. Even in his silence, his eyes told the story. One of a man haunted by love lost and a night that would never fade from his memory. Now, after more than 40 years of silence, Robert Wagner has finally spoken, not to clear his name, but to unburden his soul. Sitting in his California home, surrounded by photos of Natalie and their daughters, Wagner opened up in a rare, emotional conversation that left even his closest friends in tears. His voice was frail, his words deliberate, but his message was clear. It was time to tell the truth. I've lived my entire life replaying that night, he began. The ocean took more than Natalie that evening. It took my peace, my joy, my reason for living. For the first time, Wagner explained what he remembered most vividly. Not the argument, not the confusion, but the silence that followed. I heard the water that night, he said quietly. It's a sound I can't forget. It's haunted me for over 40 years. Wagner admitted that he and Natalie had been drinking, that tempers had flared, and that emotions were high. but he denied ever hurting her or even realizing she was in danger. We argued, yes. We always did, he confessed. But I loved her more than life itself. If I could trade places with her, I would. I've wished for that every single day. As he spoke, his eyes filled with tears. Those close to him said it was the most vulnerable they had ever seen him. I know the world has judged me, he said. They've made up their minds about what happened. But the truth is simple. It was an accident. A terrible, tragic accident. And I'll live with that pain for the rest of my life. Wagner revealed that for decades, he avoided interviews and documentaries about Natalie's death because they always focused on blame, not on the woman she truly was. Natalie wasn't just a star, he said softly. She was light. She was warmth. She was the heart of our family. Losing her broke something inside me that never healed. He spoke of the years after her death, how he struggled to raise their daughters while hiding his own grief, how every photograph, every song, every old movie brought back memories too painful to bear. I'd see her on screen, smiling, alive, and it felt like she was still with me, he said. Then I'd remember she was gone. That kind of pain never leaves you. Even now at 95, Wagner says the guilt remains. I've asked myself every day, what if I hadn't argued? What if I'd gone after her sooner? What if I'd stayed awake just a few more minutes? Those questions never stop. You just learn to live with them. In his final reflections, Wagner spoke not about mystery or controversy, but about love, the kind that endures through decades of sorrow. People remember Natalie for her beauty, her fame, her films, he said, but I remember her laughter. I remember how she'd sing in the kitchen when she thought no one was listening. That's what I hold on to. That's my truth. For Robert Wagner, speaking out after so many years wasn't about changing public opinion. It was about closure. I know people will still question what happened, he admitted. And that's all right. The only person I've ever needed forgiveness from is Natalie, and I pray she knows how much I loved her. As he finished, there was a long pause, the kind that carries decades of emotion. Then in a whisper he added, I'll see her again someday, and when I do, I'll tell her I'm sorry. It was a confession that wasn't meant to shock the world, but to heal a broken heart. And for millions who still remember the tragedy of Natalie Wood, Robert Wagner's long-awaited words finally bring a bittersweet peace to a mystery that has haunted Hollywood for generations.